What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Old Volks TV. Back on Tracys car today. Finally doing that transmission. We got the old axles and tubes pulled off. We got got everything cleaned up. The only thing we're still waiting on is the boots. Somehow they didn't make it in that first shipment, but they're on the way. So right over here, we're gonna put I'm gonna show you how the right way to put these things on so you don't have any issues. This will go for regular transmissions, new transmissions, whatever. But we'll show you how to put the axle tubes on. We'll show you how to put the axles in. Maybe we'll get the brakes on, although I think I'll probably wait because it's just going to add, a little too much weight to them when I'm putting it in. So I might just put them in axles and tubes and do the brakes later. It's super easy. So probably do that. But at least we'll get the axles on and maybe we'll get this transmission in the car today. Let's go. Okay, there's a lot of pieces here. There's a lot going on. So hopefully we can get through this fairly easily. Inside here we've got a super diff, and it requires dual snap rings instead of a one snap ring. So we got all those pieces for putting the axle in. But before we can actually put the axle in, we got to get that tube on, and we got to get all these things set up so it's not too tight. It needs to be able to move, but it also, you don't want it to be all sloppy because then it's going to leak, and you don't want to leak, and we try to avoid the leaks. So what we've got is these shims. Originally from Volkswagen there was 2 thicknesses of shims, and there's all kinds of information on the internet about this, but this is what we're stuck with these days. This is the most readily available. These come in your your rebuild kits. I think even the engine kits come with these, like the master rebuild kits. It's 1 thickness. I don't know what it is. Look it up on the internet. I don't really care because it's all you get. So what we need to do is put these on, and this acts as both a gasket and a shim, a spacer for that axle tube. So if you put less of them, it's going to be tighter. If you put too many of them, it's going to be all sloppy and it's going to leak. So what we want to do is, I start off with 2. 2 is usually the good number. You can put like up to 4, I think. Gross. But basically, you put those on. You've got this little plastic piece here, which we call the daisy, and that's just like a piece that this can ride on when it's moving around, so it's not grinding into the metal. You want to make sure that your brake clip is forward, meaning towards the nose cone, and then I'll typically do this with like 3 bolts first, or 3 nuts, just to get it sort of in the ballpark. We're doing this dry, but we're going to add that Permatex gasket stuff. What do they call it? Gasket sealant. When we do the final, you're going to have to put the axle in before you put this in for the last time, so it's just easier to do this way. So we've got good motion, but I think that's actually a little too loose. It should have some resistance on there. So we're going to take one of those out and see what we get. one gasket seems to be just right, because I've got just a little bit of drag. So we're going to put the other 3 on just to make sure that it still feels right, it doesn't get too tight, and then we'll check it again. Alright, that feels pretty good, because you want it to move on its own but not be hella sloppy. So that's good. I think we're in good shape there. Just one gasket did it. These don't take a lot of torque. You don't want to get those things too super tight. So I'll show you why, and let me just take this off. Alright, so on your axle tube, you've got this, this flange right here that's got the 6 bolts in it. A lot of times people will over tighten these and you'll bend it down, here. So you have a high spot and it's gonna leak. So what you want to do is put a straight edge from kind of bolt hole to bolt hole, and just make sure, you're never gonna be able to see that on the camera, but just make sure that it's flat in here, because then you won't have a leak. If it's like this one's fine, but if these were over tightened and this part was lower than this part and you have a gap, what you would do is take a hammer and a dolly and just put the dolly underneath here and just flatten these out so that all of these are good and flat. Sometimes you get them and they're gross and they're covered in plastic and Permatex and silicone. That's why. It's because somebody over tightened them to stop a leak and they created more of a leak. So just make sure that these are flat all the way around on both sides, and you won't have any problems with it. Alright, now that we got the axle in, got this spacer, has like a little bump on it, and down inside there in the differential there's a bump, or like a notch. So you want to get this thing in there so that it sits flush against that little cup, and once that cup's all the way down in there, there's a little space for it. Then we take our snap rings, and there is a flat side and then there's a smooth side to these snap rings. I believe the smooth side goes out. Careful. I'm just gonna hit it roll this way. And there's a little groove in there that's big enough, and with this differential they make it big enough for 2. Boy, I'm having a hard time with these snap rings. It's almost like these pliers aren't made for it. There we go. And you don't want any of this little crap to get in there, but you also don't want these to be in exactly the same spot as that side. So when we put it in there, we're going to kind of rotate it a little bit so it's on the opposite side. And there we go. Now you gotta make sure that they're all the way seated in there. And that can't come out. But you still want that to have free motion. Alright, so we're good there. That is all of the pieces for the axle. And we've got our little daisy, which we put on there nice and flat, and you can put some oil on that as well, just to kind of lubricate it a little. I keep my axle nuts on my axles so the threads don't get damaged. Okay. axle slides down right there. And again, making sure that this brake tab, you can't even hardly see it, this brake tab right here is towards the nose cone. And this is going to be a little hard to get on because of the bearing right here at the end of the tube. You should have enough to get the nuts on at least, so it'll hold it. And then you kind of got to give it a tap. Okay, these will tighten down just like a lug nut. You know, you just get them kind of snug, but you go around in a certain order. You know, side to side, crisscross, whatever. But you don't want to tighten them all down straight around because you need to get even tightening. So we're going to go around twice. These are like, I don't know, this many foot-pounds of torque. It's like snug plus a little. But again, if you over tighten it, boy, you're going to have some leaky stuff. See there? Check again. We got good motion. We're in good shape. Now, I'll back this up for you a little bit. There's our bearing, and you can't see it, but this bearing has come out of the tube. So this is where we need to get that little feller back in there, and that's going to require a little bit of heat and a little bit of a hammer. So we'll get that done real quick and we'll come back. Alright, we got lucky with this one. It wasn't too far out. I was able to get the bearing cap on and get the bolts in, and then we're slowly working our way around, and this is drawing that bearing back down into the axle tube. It was just a little bit off, you know, sticking out. It just got hung up on the axle is all. So we just do this for a little bit, and then eventually it'll be where it needs to be. And then we can pop this cap off and we can do the seal. Actually, I might even wait and do the seal when we do the brakes. Oh. Okay, we'll come back when we get this thing all put together, and then we'll get her in the car. We did it! We got axles on the transmission. Fantastic. I still want to change these boots. These boots are junk. We need to change them out for the nice German ones that are coming, but for now they'll do the job. When you put the boots on, you want to make sure that they're either at 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock as far as the angle of the seam at the top. You don't want them straight up and down because they don't bend right that way. So when the axle moves, they'll kind of bind up and they'll crack prematurely. So 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock, perfect. These are going to get swapped out anyway, so I don't care how they are, but that's it. We got to remember, Udo put this little tag on here because there's no oil in there, so we got to remember to fill that up, but that's just extra weight to try and wrestle into the car, and it's not too hard to do it once it's in there. So we're going to go ahead and fill it up after it's installed. I wanted to put this in right now, but I remembered that we have these Weber windows from Limebug, and these have to get welded in to the engine bay on the sides, and it's way easier to do when it's wide open like that and we don't have axles and things, brakes in the way. So I'm going to wait on putting this in. We're going to put these in first. We'll do that next week. I'll show you how to mark them, cut them, weld them, paint them, attach them, and that's going to make adjusting the carbs and putting the spark plugs and everything in way easier. So we'll get to that next week. For now, we're good here. Went ahead and put the starter on. I got the throw-up bearing in there. We've got the nose cone mount in there. I've got this mid mount, but this goes in after it's been installed, so that'll come later. So for now, I think we're going to call it for this week. Allergies are acting up. I got a New Year's Eve party to get to, so I got to go clean these disgusting fingers and, kind of get ready. So, with that, visit the friends, check the links, buy the t-shirts. Happy New Year. Thanks for watching.